Well, welcome into the Oklahoman's video studio. I'm Dave Morris, alongside my colleagues from the Oklahoman's newsroom, previewing some of the stories you'll find in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman over the weekend, and looking back at some of the big stories from this past week. We've learned more about Governor-elect Kevin Stitt's cabinet and how that's coming together. We'll have an update from Mecoy on the state's lawsuit versus the pharmaceutical companies. There's a big game down in Dallas this weekend as OU plays Texas, part 2. And we'll discuss mustaches. The guy next to me is Ben Felder. We have Ryan Sharp and Don Mecoy as well. Paige Dillard producing back there. Ben, I'll start with you. Kevin Stitt building the cabinet. You have been following this story, and we learned a little bit more about some of the hires this week.
Yeah, getting ready for inauguration on January 14th and trying to build that team. His first major staff announcement this week was Michael Junk as his chief of staff. Michael Junk is the deputy mayor for G.T. Bynum in Tulsa. Helped him with that win in 2016 to upset incumbent Dewey Bartlett. Also had worked for Inhofe and Coburn. So this is a political insider, but not necessarily a known political name to casual observers.
He's also a fairly young guy in his 30s,
34 years old, yeah.
It seems like he has quite a bit of experience already for being 34.
Definitely does. A lot of people I've talked to have definitely said that he is a rising star in Oklahoma political circles. And in a lot of ways, probably has a very, similar to Stitt, a very high energy, kind of a process-driven guy. You know, he'll be the chief of staff. You know, I said insider because that insider-outsider term is going to be constantly used to judge the hires that Stitt makes. He ran on that platform as an outsider, never held public office before.
Stitt's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't on this, right?
Exactly right. And I don't know that necessarily people critique this one as an insider versus outsider as much. The big one that some people did critique this week was the appointment of Secretary of Environment and Energy as a cabinet position. Kenneth Wagner, who is an official at the EPA, was brought over to the EPA with Scott Pruitt, has a long history with Scott Pruitt.
So that one name linking there, people are like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here, right?
Yeah, so and Wagner's name has been reported alongside Pruitt's concerning some of, you know, questionable behavior, including the purchase of a house from a lobbyist here in Oklahoma City. From a lot of people I've talked to in the Stitt campaign, they've said, A, this had nothing to do with Pruitt. I mean, Stitt has no relationship with Pruitt. It wasn't like, you know, Pruitt is someone that he called to make this hire. You know, I think what it says more than anything maybe is that Stitt's circle of influence really is in Tulsa. And that's really where the big connection is here, is that the connections that Stitt had with Kenneth had a lot to do with just the attorney circles. Kenneth is an attorney at a Tulsa firm, or was. It's just that Tulsa influence. You see that with Michael Junk, the deputy mayor of the city of Tulsa. Michael Rogers, former representative, who has been named Secretary of State, a Broken Arrow Republican. So really, you know, it's interesting, as Stitt moves to Oklahoma City, the balance of political power is actually kind of shifting to Tulsa when you look at some of the names.
That's probably not completely unsurprising.
No, definitely not. And so, you know, one thing, I'll have a profile on Michael Junk in Monday's paper, I believe. And one thing that's always interesting when you talk about the chief of staff is what role are they going to play. Well, I mentioned that Michael Rogers is named Secretary of State. He just finished serving in the House of Representatives. He's probably going to be your main enforcer in the legislature, the guy that's going to be whipping votes and going around. Deputy Secretary of State, that's Donnell Harder, excuse me, who was the chief spokeswoman for his campaign. She's probably going to continue that role of crafting messaging, talking to the press.
She has a ton of experience herself.
Exactly. So Junk, who admitted that speaking to the press is not his forte, doesn't necessarily feel like he'd be effective, you know, walking through the halls of the legislature trying to whip votes. He's going to be the process guy. He's going to be trying to fill in the gaps, try to help shape policy. And he said one of the things he's also going to do is he described himself as kind of a utility player, kind of finding where the gaps are, filling them. He also said, hey, I'm going to have to really help our governor-elect, who's never been in office before, who is a CEO and is going to bring a lot of those principles to the office. And Junk said, that's great. One of the things I'm going to have to do is remind him that while he supports the idea of running government like a business, government doesn't run as quickly as a business. And so sometimes it's going to be, you know, his experience that Stitt is leaning on to say, hey, why is this not moving as fast as I'd like it to, or what do we need to be doing here? But yeah, Stitt is rounding out his team with, like I said, his inauguration just a little over a month away.
Yeah, we're just weeks away from that, and you'll be able to watch a live stream on newsok.com when that does happen. Who else is left out there to fill positions, I guess? Well, what positions are left would be the better way to phrase that.
Stitt does plan to name a CEO, a chief operating officer. You know, there'll be a budget director. There'll be other members of the cabinet as well. And one thing I'm really interested to watch is, is he going to continue to tap into that circle of influence in Tulsa? Are we going to see any diversity? So far right now, everyone he's named for the most part, white, mostly male. Diversity was something that Stitt talked a lot about, wanting to make sure that the team around him. I will say that he has put together a transition team and chairs of various policy committees, still mostly white, but the gender balance is a little bit more reflected in these policy committees, which will be important because, once again, when you have a governor coming in or a governor-elect who has never held political office before, he's got specific ideas on policy, but there are a lot of issues that he probably hasn't thought of. Even the most experienced politician entering this office hasn't thought of. That these kind of policy committees are going to be important. So that's one thing I'm looking at, is just to see, what kind of mixture of diversity do we see? Mostly Republicans. Everyone's really connected to Republican circles. A couple of announcements.
Again, probably not a shock.
Yeah, but more moderate Republicans in some ways. I mean, Democrats are going to loathe the Wagner appointment with his connections to Pruitt. But Junk, who is established Republican, political official, running in the last couple of years in the mayor's office in Tulsa, which is not a partisan position, and it's a little bit more on the ground governing experience, filling potholes, hiring cops, that sort of thing. And so we have seen a couple Democrats show some support, especially for Rogers, who was named. He was the chair of the House Education Committee, so education advocates for the most part are celebrating that. He's had some gaffes with the education community in the past that has some concern. But for the most part, people I talk to in education circles say that's a nod towards education funding being a priority for Stitt this next year.
He's Ben Felder, who covers many things, including all things political at the Capitol these days. He's also the host of Political State, which you can find later today on newsok.com and your favorite iTunes or podcast place. Currently, Steve Lackmeyer is chatting on newsok.com as we tape this on Friday morning, so you can log in and see what's going on in the business community. But Ben, who do you have on this week's Political State? Yeah,
so we have Julia Curt and Carrie Hicks. They're two newly elected senators from Northwest Oklahoma City. Carrie Hicks is a former teacher, so her name was often discussed in this Teachers Caucus 2.0 storyline of this year. Julia Curt, a nonprofit executive. They both are Democrats. They both flipped Republican seats. Curt's seat is actually the former one held by now Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt. And so while it was still a largely, great night for Republicans in terms of the numbers in the legislature, Democrats did make some inroads in the urban areas. And so bringing on these two newly elected senators to kind of talk about their vision moving forward.
It'd be good stuff. You had a good conversation with Nikki Nice, Oklahoma City
Council.
Council.
New councilwoman for Oklahoma City.
That was good stuff. It was a good conversation. All right, again, you can find Political State on newsok.com. You can find the podcast version wherever you find your podcast. Don Mecoy, our colleague Randy Ellis, has a story coming up this weekend involving the state's lawsuits and pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, the state sued pharmaceutical companies. They're not the only ones that have done it, but because the marketing and the promotional things that they did with opioids, which has become a national problem. We just had some numbers come out this week about the average lifespan in the United States has decreased, and that's part of the reason. So it's a crisis situation. Oklahoma filed a lawsuit, and Mike Hunter, the AG, hired a local firm to take care of it. And the pharmaceutical companies have also hired local firms, so you've got these local attorneys who are really battling right now, and it's been quite a battle. And Randy talks about how the attorneys representing the state have accused Johnson & Johnson of hiding some documents. The Johnson & Johnson law firm came right back and accused the state of playing media games, that they're trying to blow this up into something that it's not. Anyway, Randy kind of goes through a lot of these filings, and there have been a tremendous number to sort of give us the thread of where we are on this right now. It's a fascinating read, something that's going on all over the country, and there's a real local component to it.
You're right. There's class action lawsuits everywhere. A lot of states have joined in. Oklahoma, though, has decided, hey, we're going to do our own lawsuit here. Randy Ellis is the guy for this job because that sounds like just a ton of detail.
Yeah, well, Randy's the guy who has the stacks of paper on his desk, and by golly, he's read that stuff, and then he deciphers it for us. It's a great service for our readers, and it's something that people ought to take a look at because it's pretty compelling stuff.
Don, I'll loop you in on the following conversation as well. Speaking of publications, the Friday edition of the Oklahoma, you see it right here. Ryan Sharp, sports editor, eyes on the prize, the Red River Extra. People can go to their driveways and their newsstands and pick up this fine edition.
Indeed, and we hope they do.
And it previews the big game tomorrow down in Dallas.
Yeah, and it's been a weird week in terms of game talk and things like that, because so much of the focus has been either off the field or about hand gestures and all kinds of stuff, that it's been an interesting week. Of course, the biggest one is the horns down.
How did we get here? How did this whole thing happen?
And honestly,
and how is West Virginia involved in this?
It started with a smart question from Lincoln Riley, because so 2 or 3 weeks ago, Texas plays West Virginia. West Virginia, it's a close game. West Virginia goes for 2 at the end to win the game. West Virginia quarterback Will Greer scores on a little scramble out to the left. As he's crossing the goal line, he does this and then turns it upside down, and they penalize him for it. So then everybody starts saying, okay, well, are we going to get penalized for doing this now? Which nowhere is that more prevalent than with OU and its fans. So Lincoln Riley smartly asked the question.
Thunder game and a Sooner fan will do that.
And it's not just OU. I shouldn't say that. It's OU, OSU, Texas A&M was notorious for doing it all the time. I mean, going back to the mid-2000s, Mac Brown said way back then when he was the Texas coach that the league ought to look into this, and it was disrespectful and all kinds of stuff. So Lincoln Riley smartly asked the question of the Big 12, are we going to get penalized for this if our players do it? The Big 12 came back with a very Big 12 answer, which was if it's a taunting penalty, it's a judgment call is essentially what they told him. To which Lincoln Riley said, fine, our players aren't going to do it. Which
easy to say that, but these are 18, 19-year-olds out there.
Well, and as Barry Trammell puts it, if they get penalized for it once, that means things are probably going pretty well for OU. If they get penalized for it twice, things are probably going really well for OU. So it depends on kind of what happens with the game. To me, the biggest impact this is going to have is going to be in the stands. Because now all of a sudden you've got all these fans that are charged up over this, and it's not like the Cotton Bowl where the stadium's going to be split in half. You're going to have an OU fan sit next to a Texas fan sit next to an OU fan, and for 4 quarters, an OU fan is going to be sitting in somebody's face with their horns down, and somebody's going to get punched in the face, and it's going to create issues in the stands. So I think all of this has created kind of a volatile atmosphere for Saturday, which may make it a whole lot of fun, and it may bring up some issues too.
What are we expecting attendance-wise? Because Jerry World is huge.
It's huge, but it's different. So if you look at tickets and things like this, capacity is listed at like 68,000, which is not even close.
Typical capacity is 100, I believe.
Yeah, which is not even close, because Dallas sells so many standing room only tickets. They have those concourses in the end zones where you can, and 2 levels of them, where you can buy standing room only tickets. They're only selling 10,000 of those, and I think most of those are for students. The suites, there's some issues there because Dallas does kind of exclusive rights to some of their suites, so some of those might be vacant. So it's a lot different, but 68, 70,000 or so, I think is about what you can expect.
You've been to the Cotton Bowl many times, Don, or at least I assume you have for OU Texas, and that's part of the charm is how that stadium's divided.
Yeah, and that's why I tell people who've never been to the game that you should go to one OU Texas game, because there's nothing like it.
TV doesn't know justice. When you're there in those small seats in the terrible restrooms, it's a whole other atmosphere.
It's great fun, though. But the one thing that we have learned about this that OU and Texas and OSU fans can all agree on is we're not big fans of the Big 12 commissioner and the
well,
leaders
it's
of the
not only
conference.
that, but like Breckenhager, who's one of Texas' defensive players, a really good player, he reminds me a little bit of the Boz Light. Like, he says stuff all the time. He's the one that's growing out his hair really long and said he's not going to cut it until Texas wins a Big 12 title. Shortly after their game last week, somebody asked a question looking towards the Big 12 title game. He stopped, looked at the clock, and said it's 11:42, and OU still sucks. And the Big 12 penalized him for it. And they reprimanded him for it, whatever that means.
Because he had to apologize. That's right.
And so you've got all these fans and stuff saying the Big 12 is going soft with all this, and a lot of it was OU people sticking up for Texas, saying this isn't how this should be. It's a rivalry. Barry Switzer sounded off this week in only ways that he can, which quite frankly aren't suited for print or video or any other medium. But it's put a lot of fire into the game, and it's going to make it really interesting. And that's, again, void of the competitiveness on the field, which neither one of these teams play all that great a defense, but they're capable of scoring.
Or any defense.
Any defense. So it should be pretty similar to what we saw in October in the Cotton Bowl. So it should be a great game and a lot of fun.
All right, so plenty of coverage can be found on newsok.com throughout the game as our reporters do a fine job on social media, and then the online editors do a nice job updating the site. Plenty of photos from our photographers, who I assume will be down there.
Yep.
All right, and then following that game, that leads into Sunday's bowl announcements and the playoff announcements.
Yeah, so OU's sitting right outside of the top 4 at the moment, but the way that things are lined up, you've got to figure if everything kind of plays out as we assume it will. If OU wins, there's a good chance that they slide into that number 4 spot for the playoff, because Alabama's playing number 4 Georgia.
You assume
Alabama wins that, which would knock Georgia out of it. The big question there is what happens with OU and Ohio State. Ohio State kind of jumped up some spots after their dismantling of Michigan. And so there's questions about how these 2 games go, because Ohio State's in the Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. So if Ohio State beats Northwestern by 40 and OU either wins by 7 or 10 or whatever, what does the committee do? The difference there is OU's loss was against Texas, who at the time was, I think, a top 15, top 10 team, highly ranked. Ohio State's loss was against Purdue.
Came out of nowhere.
Not ranked, has not had a very good season, and it was by 30 points.
Yeah.
And so Barry Trammell actually in today's paper went back and looked at the teams that have made the playoffs either in this college football playoff era or the BCS, and those one-loss teams and where that one loss came from and how many points they lost by. And
speaking of Randy Ellis digging deep into stuff, so does Barry.
Barry's the Randy Ellis of sports. And so nobody has ever made the playoff with that kind of loss, with what Ohio State had to Purdue. And so it's really interesting to kind of look at, and that this might be the first time if Ohio State ends up jumping OU and how that works. But we'll find out about midday Sunday where teams are headed. It'll take a little bit longer for Oklahoma State. They're kind of down towards the bottom of the Big 12 pecking order, but that'll come sometime Sunday afternoon, early evening.
Good stuff. Of course, you can find updates throughout the weekend on newsok.com of OU Texas on Saturday and all the playoff stuff for college bowl games on Sunday and Sunday evening, which brings us to the final question of the day. The mustache. This is a new look for Ben Felder. The mustache, is this sticking around? We like this?
I don't know. You've mentioned it more than my wife has, which was surprising to me. I shaved, and I thought I would be gone in 30 minutes, but she didn't say anything.
Interesting.
So I'm kind of just leaving it here. I don't even know if she watches this show. We'll see that too.
Yeah, I mean,
if she pays attention to my face, or if she even watches videos that I'm on. We'll learn that tomorrow.
And Satchel, your son, is he like, Dad, I like that, good look?
Oh, he hasn't paid attention to that either. So I don't know. I just I forgot it was there. I shaved it and I was like, this is going to be short-lived.
I was tempted this morning because I knew we were going to bring Ben on, and I was going to just give him a hard time for no reason at all. I was tempted to go just mustache this morning just to see, which, by the way, looks terrible.
I'm surprised it had. Mine looks terrible?
No, mine would look terrible.
I'm not saying mine looks great. I just did it and it's left, and you know what? My hair tends to change. My facial hair tends to change just based on
I can't grow a beard worth anything.
Motivation.
You gentlemen, have you ever mustache?
No. Not a chance.
I did when my first child was born, when I was off work for 12 weeks, but that was it.
I've got a little bit of facial hair. I don't think I would keep it if I just did a clean shave on the side. I feel like the the shadow on the face helps out a little bit. I don't know. This is already too much talk about.
Hey, just like Dave, wrap this up. Again, stories much like these, and perhaps even discussion like this, can be found on newsok.com and in upcoming editions of the Oklahoman. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.